It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
So my friends, September 10th, 1897. What do you think happened? Well, let me read it to you. Here on September 10th, 1897, nearly 400 immigrant coal miners on strike were met and fired upon by the sheriff's deputies, unarmed. They were marching from Harwood to Lattimer in support of higher wages and more equitable working conditions. 19 of the marchers were killed and 36 were wounded. This was one of the most serious acts of violence in American labor industry, and it was the Lattimer Massacre. Very happy that I have on the show today Reverend Earl Roberts, who is the pastor of Lattimer United Methodist Church in Lattimer. The massacre itself tells us something, but what lessons do we learn and what can we learn from that? I think you'll find it a very interesting show. Thanks, Reverend, for getting in touch with me and coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So let's talk about what happened at the Lattimer Massacre and what led up to it, and then, of course, we'll talk about what followed it.
The United Mine Workers have been organizing in the area and had been encouraging the people to strike. And they were also trying to increase their membership. The miners were experiencing difficulty in terms of their income and their working conditions, and the thing just kind of mushroomed. There was about 400 miners that walked on walked Lattimer. And when they were intended to walk without any weapons, not even a walking stick. There was just one person carrying a flag, an American flag, and marching under the privilege of the American flag. And when they got to Lattimer, there was a scuffle. One of the posse, maybe the sheriff himself, trying to take that flag away from them. And then the order was given to fire. What was happening was that the sheriff had been asked to control what was going on here. He had a posse of 150 men, and they were given all new carbines. Many of them were or Winchesters, I'm not sure which, but they were there to greet them. And they came with the prejudice of some of them counting how many miners they would be able to kill that day. And it was that serious. And workers were surprised. The guns came on, and most of the wounds that the workers received were in their back because they were running away. There were even some evidence later of headshots at the end to make sure that the people that were shot were dead. There were 19 in all killed outright. There was about 40 people taken to the hospital. The funerals went on for several days to deal with the remains. And it was a very difficult experience.
Looking back as to saying, well, people who are up in age right now in their 80s can remember, the mines. I was telling you, even late 70s, but my grandfather worked in the mines, coming over. What was it like, to be a miner then?
It was a hard life. You lived mostly in company housing. You were required to buy your goods at the company store. There was even a butcher who came around to the branch towns, and you had to buy from him. There was a supply house where if you needed dynamite to do the work for the company, you had to go and buy the dynamite yourself. Sometimes the work was many long hours. There were other times when there were slumps in business, demand and sale, and the workers would not have many hours to raise the money to feed their families. When a person died in the mines, their body was taken and delivered to the house where the widow was, and she was given so many days to get out. They couldn't stay there. Sometimes when they consolidated some of the mines, there was a matter of the mules they used in the mines. And there was a teenage boy, a couple of boys, that had to go and get those mules at the stables and bring them to work every day and take them back. It probably took maybe an hour each way, and they were not paid for that. They were just expected to do it. So it was a difficult, hard life. One that was afflicted with ethnic tension because of the different groups that came. So.
You would think that back in the company houses, and I remember the stories about the company houses, and from what I hear, maybe you could attest to this, that not only did they have to live in the company houses, but buy from them.
That's right.
And the prices that they were paying were not fair prices.
No.
Other words, they were being ripped off both ways.
Yes.
Okay. So, is that true?
Yes, it is true. They were any possible way to separate them from their money seemed to be what the owners wanted to do, and.
Well, you're coming close to slavery here.
Coming close to it. Certainly not just wages. There's an economic issue here, certainly. They've been with us for a long time.
What was the significance? What happened after the massacre?
After the massacre, there was the United Mine Workers gained some strength and organization. There was also the creation of the Pennsylvania State Police, at least an impetus to that, that we needed a statewide policing organization. The workers still had a long road to go after time, but the improvements were not great.
Well, when they came over, they were seeking work, of course, and they had papers. You said, right?
Yes.
These all had papers. So the owners that were here, that owned the mines, do you think that they were prejudiced?
Yes, I think they were. They looked down on these people as somehow not worthy of concern. They were just to be used, kind of like they were cogs in a machine. But if one died, we'd just take them out and put another one in, and they were not certainly concerned about their welfare. They called out the sheriff to come and sort this out, to stop the protest. The sheriff in Schuylkill County got a similar request and refused to do it. But Sheriff Martin did do it and gathered these people together. And there were people who were Slavic, some Polish, some Lithuanian, some German, I think I said, and Italian. And each group was separated by language very often. It was difficult for them to communicate. And it was difficult for them to kind of blend in. It was kind of one group would get here, and then they'd rise up a bit, and another group would get here, kind of a step migration that hopefully would end at some point when people began to be more welcoming. But right now, at that time, it was a lot of economic immigration prejudice.
You know, it's fascinating because what happens as we went through the decades, the people still had prejudice, okay? Either you were anti-Italian, anti-Irish, anti-Polish, and then you have the clubs that were formed, and they did not want the Italians or Polish. They're exclusive clubs, and here again, looking down on these people, okay? Where's the lesson to be learned here, you know, in our society today, when we're looking at all kind of crazy things that are happening, Reverend, and you try to do your best. If you're a God-fearing person, I think you try to do your best. But yet, you know, I was telling you, when's enough enough? When's enough enough? You know?
We, as human beings, tend to think that history began with us. You know, instead of having a history to fall back on, we look back at history like this and we see immigration issues, ethnic issues and race issues. We see corruption issues, economic oppression, and police, the authority of the police or any authority abusing their power and committing murder, which they got away with by the end. They were put on trial and they were not convicted. So you have all these issues that are still burning today in terms of immigration, in terms of police brutality, in terms of racism. And if we look back and say, well, listen, we've been doing it this way all these years. We've been trying to fight back and oppress and hold down and resist. And we're still where we were before. The names may have changed some, but we're still doing this crazy abuse. Maybe there has to be another way to do it. Maybe we should be talking with each other or finding a peaceful way to begin to address these issues. We come at the issues now as something that we have to be hostile about immigration. Okay, immigration has got its issues, but instead of trying to sit down and think reasonably and care and lovingly about how to deal with the issue, we just keep pushing it away and scapegoating immigrants, and we don't think about where they came from, what kind of conditions they're leaving, and it's time for us to look back and see in our history that, geez, we've been doing it this way for a long time. It's time to do it some other way and do it better, both economically and in race and everything else.
And you know, it's so true. What you say makes a lot of sense. The only problem is sometimes taking that sense and letting people understand that. I said to you, if you're not a God-fearing person and you have no substance in your life, you could care less about anybody, okay? Hence, you know, when I talk about abortion, well, you don't care about a life, okay? And so if you don't care about a life, then what makes you think you're going to care about these minors that, you know, they were just things. Yeah. Like you said, if a minor died, could you imagine just the grief in the family and then throwing the body in front and saying that you got 8 days to get up? I mean, so it's just like inhumane, okay? But the getting back to our today, and you hear people, here's what you hear from both sides, Republicans and Democrats as well. Before we do this, how many votes can we get? Yeah. Okay, instead of what we can do to help, it's how many votes we can get. As you see what's going on in the country today, it's all vote-oriented, which is so sad. Wouldn't you think so, Reverend?
I think so. And for all the talk about trying to wipe out election fraud, the very people that are talking about wiping out election fraud are practicing it themselves. They want to do away with the Republican primary for the president. Yeah. And you know, they decide we're not going to do that. Yeah. Or for gun control, the leader of the Senate gets to say, well, we're not going to talk about that. The rest of the world wants to talk about it. He doesn't want to talk about it. And he wants to protect his position and his votes. And I think that's a large part of it.
And here again, and I understand what you're saying, but there's always two sides. Yeah. You know, what you know, why is it that particular thing, okay? And then you know, like you ever, when I debated in college, it was fascinating because 1 month you had to study the pro, and 1 month you had to study the negative part, okay? And you became more aware to make a better decision, okay? And say, oh, I didn't know that. You know, so you always try to bring two sides. Folks, I'm talking to Reverend Earl Roberts. Interesting conversation. The Lattimer Massacre, 122 years ago in 1897. What do we learn from that today? And, you know, it's interesting just to think about this and to how do we make our lives better? How do we help people out? You know, if we have faith and we're practicing it, it should come automatically, but unfortunately it doesn't in some areas. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7, you're going to watch all of our programs. Now we have improved the website. You can see everything in detail. So all you do is go to samsonssptv.com, and you have a selection there of every show we've done so far. And also remember Comcast 190 in Pottsville, 7 to 11 every day. In the Scranton area, Saturday and Sunday mornings from 8 to 12 on Comcast 190. In Wilkes-Barre, Kingston, and Mountaintop area, we're on Service Electric Cable Communications, which is Channel 92, Saturday and Sunday evenings. And my guest today is Reverend Earl Roberts. We're talking about the Lattimer Massacre. Happened in 1897. Interesting how these poor men were actually slaughtered, I think, you know. And we talked about, Reverend, about how do you communicate, what we learn from that. Now, I'm taping the show today, of course, and we're going to show this show many times. But if you're watching this show, folks, before September 15th, which is Sunday, something's happening. So let's talk about that event, which I think is interesting.
There'll be a service that's been held there every year for quite a few years now, sponsored by the Hazleton Interfaith Ministerium. And it's a service of remembrance and hope and healing, trying to not lose track of what this event was, to remember the sacrifices that were made, and to also call us to think about what it does mean for us in our lives today. It's not something that's just in the distant past. We're connected to it. So it's Sunday, September the 15th at 3 o'clock. We'll be down at the monument, which is at the corner of Lattimer and Quality Road in Lattimer. And we'll gather around and have our service. We have a guest speaker coming in, who is Paul Shackle. He's written a new book called Remembering Lattimer, and he's been doing archaeological work in Lattimer and at Eckley as well with students. He's from the University of Maryland, a teacher there, professor, and he's come here every year to do this work. And he's offered to come and speak to us at this service as well. Also, Bill Bachman, who has been our speaker very often and is a real expert on this, will be there as well. There'll be time for us to do some responsive readings, some prayers, and some remembrance. We'll put out the flags for the people that have died. We'll also read the memory list of those who have passed away at this event. And if there's rain, it'll be at the Lattimer United Methodist Church, which is further up the road, and you'll all be welcome to come there and join us. We hope you will.
What do you think people will get from this when you say remembrance and healing, etc.? And it's a great opportunity. I mean, folks, if you're watching the show before September 15th, you may would like to go there. It's 3 o'clock at Lattimer Massacre, and it's at the corner of Lattimer and Quality Road. Just right, you can't miss it when you come into Lattimer. But what do you think? What do you think people will get out of this?
I like to think that their hearts get touched and say, not only was this wrong, but is there something to respond to it today? Some way to make things better? I hope people will feel thankful for those that were courageous enough to stand up and seek redress for their grievances. And sometimes life requires great commitment, sometimes even of one's life. And I think that ought to move us. I think the people that come there are open to that, otherwise they wouldn't be there.
Sometimes people feel like, what could I do? Okay, well, you would hope the kindness would become contagious. And I said before, remember how important every individual person is, Reverend.
That's right.
I was giving a talk a while back, and there was like 100 people in the room. And before they came in, I made sure everyone had a candle. And when they came in, I made sure that I said, oh, shut the lights off. And we started lighting candles in the back. And the first candle wasn't, well, fine, didn't give enough light. But as we proceeded, every individual person's light, at the end, 100 people, and the room was glowing. So everybody had a part in that. So I think what's happening is someone's getting something good, and if kindness could be contagious and understanding, boy, and put your pride aside, and most especially take that big ego that people walk around with and get rid of that ego. Wouldn't you think so?
I think so. And to use your image, when you share the light, you don't lose your light. It multiplies. You don't give it up. If you give up money, well, you have less money, but with the light and with love, it spreads.
Yeah. And
I'd like to see that happen.
Well, I think it's a good opportunity for us to learn something from that. And what do you? It's like hearing we coming your services, and hopefully you'll leave a service with a message.
Yeah.
Like when I go to Mass on Saturdays, I hopefully leave something with that. Oh, I really made, and it's like loving your neighbor, okay,
Sure.
and respecting that. So the Lattimer Massacre today. To summarize, what do you think we should get out of this particular terrible thing that happened?
I think we should get a memory, and I think we should get also an encouragement to do what we can to make it a better world where we live. You don't have to do a lot of travel. Right in our own town, we have opportunities to be gracious and kind, and I think that's what people maybe would get out of this, and give thanks.
Folks, I'm talking to Reverend Earl Roberts, who is the pastor of Lattimer United Methodist Church, talking about the Lattimer Massacre. Come back, we'll wrap it up, just a review as what this was and how terrible it was, and hopefully we've learned throughout the 122 years something from it. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. In 1897, September 10th, the Lattimer Massacre, where it was pitiful what they did to these poor people. And my guest today is Reverend Earl Roberts, who is the pastor of Lattimer United Methodist Church. So happy that he got in touch with me to do the show because I'm learning a lot. Once again, if you're watching the show before September 15th, 3 o'clock, be at Lattimer. You're gonna have it's a great opportunity for you to learn it. And if you have your children, bring them with you, because it'll be a great opportunity to learn what life's right.
That's right.
It'd be a good opportunity to see what's going on. Paul Shackle, who is going to be one of the main speakers, and Bill Bachman, etc. A lesson to be learned from this Lattimer Massacre, Reverend.
The lesson to be learned is it's important to care. It's important to care about what goes on. You've demonstrated your caring by having us here today, and that's wonderful. I appreciate that. If all of us could see this, hear this story, and care about what happened then, care about what's happening now, and simply say, wherever I can do it, I'm going to be a person of grace and love, and try to be not just emoting with the issues of the day, but think about what's behind them. Sometimes we're a nation of immigrants, as someone has told me, but we don't like immigrants. Why is that? Maybe we need to think a bit about who we are and our life together as human beings.
It's very difficult to speak to a person who is ultra liberal and ultra conservative, because they're cemented in, okay, and there's no openness there for them to. Let's see, like I always say sometimes, I could tell you, Reverend, what color is this? Yeah. But you talk to some people who are really whacked. Yeah. They're going to tell you, oh, it's not white, it's a little gray, it's a little pink. So these sometimes where you need prayers.
Yeah, prayer.
You need prayers desperately,
Absolutely. Prayer and receiving the grace of God, the love of God.
I said to you before, I feel so sorry for those people who do not practice a religion. I feel sorry for them. And I don't care whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Jew. They are doing such injustice to themselves, personally, I would think so, by not having any substance in their life. Yeah. It's, we're all sinners, there's no question about it, but when you think so as a reverend, you've been around a while, my gosh.
I think it's the church is in worship, whatever religion you're at, if you're Jewish or Muslim or whatever, is a place to learn about peace and grace and to have your life strengthened. We don't do it to get something from God. We do it because God loves us. And our way of saying thank you is to love God and love each other.
And he gave you 10 reasons why.
Yeah, that's right.
He gave you 10 reasons why.
Right.
Just live by the 10 reasons and the 10 commandments, and you're in good shape.
Yes,
okay,
that's right.
Isn't that right?
Yeah. That's right.
I'm going to come to one of your services.
Okay, good.
Yeah, but I'll call Earl Berger up and say, Earl, when is it going to be a good day for a good message? Okay.
Little Berger, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he does a lot for your church, and he's a great supporter and does a lot for the community as well. Well, Reverend, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Okay?
Thank you.
Be no stranger. If we could do anything for your church or your congregation, please let us know.
Okay, I will.
All right. I happen to own this thing, so I could tell you that. Okay. Reverend Earl Roberts, folks, who's a pastor of Lattimer United Methodist Church. Once again, I'm playing the show after September 15, but if you're watching it before September 15, it'd be a great opportunity for you to go there at 3 o'clock on Lattimer for just to learn about what that. But bring your kids. And you college kids would get a great opportunity here of learning about life and what it's about and what these people went through. And then you'll really appreciate what's going on in your life today, right, Reverend?
Right. Absolutely true.
Right. We'll see you next time.